have a few stories to share from when Jenessa was of age 11 to 13. Maybe Yavna students here in the 5th, 6th, or 7th grade can relate. Jenessa graduated from Yavna in 5th grade in 1993, and the following year, 93, 94, was very special for me and her in that Jenessa joined me in Israel for a sabbatical year abroad. It was very special for Jenessa's growth into a strong, young, independent young woman. I worked part-time and attended Ulpan. Meanwhile, Jenessa went to 6th grade at a progressive religious school called Beit Sefer Ephrata, which is somewhat aligned with Yavna philosophy, more so than probably any other school in Jerusalem. Lost. After finding a gymnastics program that was on the other side of Jerusalem, Jenessa started to take the bus by herself to the school. One day she looked up and she didn't recognize where she was at all. She started crying and moved toward the exit. A woman said, "Ma kara matuka," "What's wrong, sweetie?" And Jenessa replied, "Ani lo yedea," "I don't know where I am. I must have missed my stop." The woman offered, "Well, we'll get off the bus together and find your way." Off the bus they went. "What school do you go to?" She replied, "Beit Sefer Ephrata." "I'll take you there." As soon as they turned the corner, a few blocks later, Jenessa recognized her school, thanked the woman, and ran all the way home to tell me the story. Cindy has remarked, "Well, why would you let an 11-year-old ride the bus by herself?" She wasn't by herself. There were dozens of Jewish mothers on that bus. Weekend in Paris. In 1994, Purim was a 4-day weekend. I flew Jenessa and myself to Paris for a weekend with my friends John and Mindy. Somehow, well, my brother died that first night, and somehow Cindy found me in Paris. I can't hide anywhere. And called me, and I quickly arranged to fly back to Baltimore to bury my brother, Jenessa's Uncle Marty. So I said to Jenessa, do you want to go with me to Uncle Marty's funeral and sit Shiva in Baltimore? And she said, "How about I stay here with John and Mindy and we'll see Paris together?" So that's what they did, and she spent $500,000, 3 or 4 days, climbing the Eiffel Tower by foot, going to Euro Disney, going with Mindy to her prenatal OBGYN appointment, thereby extending her sex education she had at Yavna. I then met her. She had to get through the airport by herself. She had to get from this non-secure to secured side of the airport by herself. So I met her at the meeting spot in the Paris airport, and we returned to Jerusalem together. And on the flight, she shared all of her adventures with me. We did a lot of traveling. We went to Tiulim trips every week, sometimes with my Ulpan, and sometimes with her class, and sometimes just ourselves. A year later, at age 13, at her bat mitzvah, she spoke of all her travels all over Israel and tied that to her parsha, which was Shlech Lecha, which is the 12 spies exploring the land of Israel. It's an interesting coincidence that was her parsha. Holocaust education. Jenessa had learned a little about the Holocaust in 5th grade at Yavna. And we did have a family Israel trip the summer before with the typical rushed 2-hour tour of Yad Vashem. In the spring of '94, Jenessa and I were invited to a Shabbat weekend at an acquaintance house in Kfar Adumim, which is a West Bank settlement a couple of miles north of Ma'ale Adumim and about a dozen miles east of Jerusalem, if you know what I mean. The picture I posted of Jenessa doing a handstand in someone's grass with the Judean desert behind her. That was on my Facebook post. That was taken that day in Kfar Adumim. Over the weekend, we would learn about the life of the settlers, as we call them, or they call themselves, just communities in the Judean desert, and the political conflicts of the settlements. But Jenessa was more interested in our host's job as a docent at Yad Vashem. She asked, "Will you teach me about the Holocaust?" So the next week, this woman picked up Jenessa, took her to the museum, and explained every single exhibit and answered every one of Jenessa's questions. And she had questions about every exhibit, every picture, every photo, practically. They spent an entire day. Then Jenessa came home loaded with several books on the Holocaust, which she studied, of course. So at the age of 12 and a half, Jenessa really began to understand about the suffering of the Jewish people. Through these stories, you can see how Jenessa was primed to become a Jewish educator.
Thank you, Alan. As we met and spoke and told stories the last day or so, letters upon letters and emails upon emails came pouring in from former students, that Jewish educator that she was destined to become. And as we met with the family and we read these, it became clear that we also wanted to hear today from a student, a representative of all of the many students that she has had. So I'd like to invite up Solly Birkenwald, an alum of Yavna, to share some words about Jenessa, the teacher.
Two days ago, when I was sitting with Aviva Wilmot during my off period, she opened the email telling of Ms. Schwartz's passing. As she read the message aloud, I was devastated, but I couldn't help but smile. Calling her a cancer thriver was nothing short from the truth. Cancer was afraid of Ms. Schwartz. I remember back in middle school when she began her treatment while simultaneously teaching her students. I would see her walking around Yavna with a bag quite literally feeding her with chemotherapy. She respected her students enough to welcome them into her personal life and her struggles. For a middle school student, it was difficult to grasp the gravity of the situation. I constantly heard stories of her battle with cancer, but I never really internalized this, as she remained an energetic and passionate teacher. Reflecting back now, it is inspiring the lengths she went to continue practicing her passion. Growing up, I struggled with ADHD. I was an out-of-control child who needed constant assistance and reassurance to stay in line. I do not think that it is a stretch to say that I would have fallen through the cracks anywhere else if not for teachers like Ms. Schwartz. Ms. Schwartz helped me discover my gifts as a student and as a person. She was a very pro-mistakes teacher, and much of what we learned was outside of the classroom. Each year at Yavna, we went on a journey. In 7th grade, we got to go to Ashland, Oregon. We got the opportunity to go whitewater rafting, and as we were getting ready to board the rafts, the instructor directed us to put on wetsuits and life jackets. I insisted that I didn't need a wetsuit as I don't get cold. And Ms. Schwartz simply told me that I would have to deal with the consequences. 2 hours later, I was curled up in a ball in the back of my raft in one of the harshest, most brutal thunderstorms I have ever experienced. When I got off the raft, Ms. Schwartz let me wrap myself up in a jacket and told me that she hoped I learned something. She supported her students to go out of their comfort zone and become comfortable with the uncomfortable. Her support as a teacher and as a friend inspired her students to follow their passions. She was quite literally always there to help her students, as her doors were open during lunch and the students would come into her room just to talk and spend time with her. Whether it was through tefillah, musicals, or putting songs to grammar, she always was able to add music and love into her students' lives. She taught me to take advantage of opportunities and lead a life that I chose to live, as it is something special.
Thank you, Solly. One of the things that I have always loved about Jenessa was her honesty and authenticity. So I'm going to start there. This is really hard. Typically, the rabbi's task is to hold the community, to be the person who is slightly removed, just enough, to offer a eulogy that can weave and synthesize the thoughts and feelings and memories of others. And while I have known for a few years that when the time came, this would be my role, and that Ness thought of me as her rabbi, today I just really missed my friend. And nothing that I can say to you feels adequate. The last 7 years have been rough. So I want to start by inviting each of you to close your eyes. And I want you to picture Jenessa in a moment of joy. Where are you? What is she doing? What are you doing? Just breathe and let yourself be in that moment with her. Is she a little girl? A college student? Perhaps this moment of joy is right here in this building. Or maybe you're snuggled up in a bed or a couch with a book. Maybe you're in the audience watching her shine on stage. Or maybe you're on stage and she's humbly and expertly guiding you through a rehearsal. Maybe you're doing handstands on the grass of a Silomar, sitting around a Shabbat table, or learning how to annotate a text. Give yourself another moment to be with her in that moment of joy. Stay in that moment, or please come back and join us in this room. Jenessa has been taken from us far too early, far too soon. But wow, in those 41 years of life on this earth, did she really pack it in? For me, the moments that flash before my eyes when I picture a moment of joy is either when I'm watching her sing, like in a Yavna Guggenheim production, or a moment when she's teaching, like introducing the giver to the new crop of sixth graders. And sometimes she might be doing both. Most recently, the moment of joy I picture comes from last school year, on the days that I would drive Ramona and Solly to school. I loved seeing the smile spread across her face as she would peer into the window of my back seat before they would get out of the car for a hug and walk inside together. In Pirkei Avot, we are taught, Aseh lecha rav ukne lecha chaver. Make for yourself a teacher and acquire for yourself a friend. This verse encapsulates so much of Jenessa, no matter which way you read it. Jenessa turned her teachers and students into friends through her curiosity, empathy, and recognition of each unique individual. As one colleague said to me yesterday, so much of Nessa's teaching has to do with making people feel present and valid. I think that's why people were always wowed by her. She managed to make every single learner feel validated, but then nonchalantly get kids excited about prepositions. And she became a teacher to her friends through her choices, her writing, and the way she lived. Jenessa was the ultimate chavruta partner, not just to learn with, but a chavruta for life. Whether you worked with her, lived with her, loved her, or just casually knew her, she would listen carefully for the important details. She would question, as we heard. She would imagine, whether it was an imaginary friend or the possibilities of the world. And she wondered about the way things could be. But what really makes a good chavruta is she also challenged with her critically thought out, eloquently articulated, strong opinions. She was the ultimate chavruta partner because she always made you better. So take another moment. What is something Jenessa taught you? How did she make you better? When I asked Ramona and Solly yesterday what their mom taught them, without missing a beat, Solly said the Oxford comma. And while we know that Jenessa did indeed love grammar and was quite passionate about the Oxford comma, we know she has taught us so much more. Jenessa taught us about perseverance, confidence, and determination. And these qualities were not just ways of being that came to her during the 7 years since her cancer diagnosis. These were character traits she cultivated from the day she was born, on June 12th, 1982. While she was in elementary school at Yavna, she stridently and matter-of-factly informed her father that when he started the new Cub Scout troop for boys, it was unfair. Why couldn't she go on the camping trip? She wanted to make a pine wood derby car. Did I get that right? Pine wood derby car? And so, the Cub Scout troop went on family camping trips, not just boys camping trips. And Jenessa even earned her own wood whittling badge. Jenessa also taught us the importance of knowing who you are and to celebrate who you are. She taught us that because she knew who she was and what she wanted. She loved theater. Her love of theater began at the age of 5 at the Performing Arts Camp at the JCC. And she knew she loved it so much, she wouldn't attend any other camp her parents tried to get her to go to. 6 weeks every summer, first as a camper, then as a counselor, probably with many of you in this room. This love of theater then took her across the country to Warren Wilson College, where she continued to develop the person she knew she was meant to be. She honed her craft on the stage, sometimes even at the expense of her own body. Broken toes, sore vocal cords, the show still went on. And she also developed her skills backstage, learning how to be a stage manager, and even helping the college develop their school's theater minor. She was so beloved at this school that they invited her back after she left to fill in for the stage director. So Jenessa taught us how to persevere. Jenessa taught us how to be determined. Jenessa taught us how to celebrate who we are. And she also taught us about love, friendship, and family. She taught us about love, friendship, and family through her big choices, like to be a surrogate. And she also taught us through her daily choices in the little moments of how she would spend quality time with the important people in her life. Whether it was just laying on the couch watching TV, going for a walk in Sanborn Park, baking treats, enjoying a big family Shabbat dinner, or reading all of Harry Potter at bedtime. She loved to be with the people she loved. Jenessa loved each of you fiercely and proudly. Trevor, before COVID, we met to plan your wedding. Things went differently thanks to COVID, but Jenessa's feelings didn't change. And when we met to plan your wedding, she said the following: I think the most important thing is he makes me feel beloved. And when I'm about to start falling, he's strong enough to catch me. You are strong enough. Ramona and Solly, your mom loved you more than anything. We see her curiosity and questioning in you, Solly. We see her strident, strong will and ability to change the world in you, Ramona. That love that she has for you lives in you, and it always will. Like many of you, I imagine, I have been rereading Jenessa's blog. There's really no other way to end this but to have Jenessa teach us one more time in her own words. This final passage was written on her first cancerversary in 2018. It happened to also be that this day fell at the same time as Passover. And I should warn you all, there will be swearing. These are Jenessa's words. Passover can serve to remind us that each of our lives contains our own personal Mitzrayim, our own narrow places where we feel constricted, limited, trapped. This year, the cancer was my Mitzrayim. I was a slave to doctors, appointments, treatment protocols, and diets. I was limited by fatigue, nausea, weakness, and pain. I was trapped by perilous surgeries and grueling recoveries. Within these narrow places, however, I experienced a profound liberation by recognizing a few simple, even cliche ideas. Life is fucking hard. Life is fucking short. And life is fucking beautiful. It is precious. It is a gift. Facing one's own mortality in very real and tangible ways is as freeing as it is terrifying. Learning to live each day to its fullest potential, to, as my favorite pair of socks says, carpe the fuck out of this diem, is an ongoing process. I have not perfected it yet, and I doubt I ever will. But over this past year, I have tried my damnedest. I have loved with abandon. I have revisited some of my favorite places and reconnected with some of my most favorite people. I have been to more theater, read more books, and listened to more music. I talk to strangers and practice yoga and eat dessert. I teach my favorite books and insist that my students embrace the Oxford comma. I have tried to cherish every moment I have with my kids, even the sucky ones. And I am determined to nurture their empathy, kindness, humor, and passion for musical theater. I have escaped my narrow places by laughing more freely and loving more deeply. My liberation comes in the form of my friends, my family, and my community. Yehi zichra baruch. May her memory be for a blessing. I'd like to now invite up Rabbi Philip O'Reiner. Who will chant El Malei Rachamim.
El Malei Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Hametzei Menucha Nechona תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמה את יפה נחמה בת שן ליבה ואחרון שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תהי מנוחתה אנא בעל הרחמים הסתיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים צרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה. ונאמר אמן. El Malay Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Jenessa Michelle Schwartz, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bonds of life. May she rest in peace. Say amen.
Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel teaches that there are 3 ways to mourn. Modern psychology says there are many ways, and all of them are okay, however you're feeling. However, he said, the first is to cry, the second is to grow silent, and the third is to transform sorrow into song. Let's sing together.
Students,
In a moment, when the service concludes, the family will leave for a private burial and then return here at approximately 11 a.m. for lunch. So in a few moments, you are invited to step outside, get some fresh air, and meet the family back here for lunch at 11. Shiva services will also be held Saturday night at Beth David at 7:15. And then subsequent Shiva services will be held at Cindy and Steve's home at 7 o'clock, Sunday through Thursday of next week. I'd like to invite up our pallbearers who are going to escort Jenessa out of the JCC one last time to her final resting place. Jamie, Danielle Sapiens, Colin Davis, Jonathan Schwartz, Josh Schwartz, and Gideon Schroeder. Please come. Before we finally conclude, Jenessa talked a lot over the last 7 years about silver linings. I don't think it's the moment yet for that. However, this family needs you to continue to be their community and to name those silver linings in the coming days, in the coming weeks, in the coming months, and the coming years. Jenessa would want us to hold on to those silver linings. Please rise. I invite the family to follow. Thank you all so much for being here. The family would really love if you are able to be here at 11, to join them, to comfort them. May Jenessa's memory always be for a blessing. Thank you.